Hey everybody, Zach Hampson here. So today I'm going to show you how I put together this portrait painting of myself in this sketchbook.
Alright, let's get into this. So first off, let's talk about what I'm painting on top of. I'm painting on top of a Strathmore Series 500 mixed media sketchbook. And then I've gone ahead and gessoed up the paper so that my paint doesn't soak through the paper and make it heaps shitty. So what you want to do is gesso up the paper, preferably about 2 coats of gesso, sanding in between each dried coat. If you don't know what gesso is basically just an acrylic primer. What that does is it allows the paint to sit on top of the surface or whatever surface you're painting upon. When you gesso that surface, it allows a sealant on top of that surface so that your paint doesn't soak through into that surface, making your paint colors less vibrant, making your paint a bit more duller. Yeah, so essentially it's just a nice protective layer which strengthens the paper there so I can work on top of that with my oil paint. Yeah. So you can see that the paper is a bit of it's a darker color compared to the page beside it. That's because I've gone ahead and stained that. Staining any sort of surface before you paint on it just allows you to play around with the tones and judge the tones, especially the darker and lighter tones, a bit easier rather than having just this stark white background. So that really helps when it comes to the painting process. Not necessarily for the drawing process, but it looks cool for the drawing process nonetheless. So you can see I've started off with just a freehand drawing of a reference photo that I took of myself just with my basic Logitech webcam that I use to live stream, and sometimes actually that's what I'm using to record this video with. Actually, now that I remember, the footage is all from that Logitech webcam. So yeah, I just took a real just basic photo of myself looking a bit more stern, looking a bit more determined. That was the pose I really wanted to hold, and usually what would be great about self-portraits is if you have a mirror, and it just allows you to capture that real life color and vibrancy in real time, and seeing what the colors look like with your eyes, and not having a camera lens judge the colors and change the colors on you. But I didn't feel like holding my face for that long for that position, so I just took a photo, sketched it out, and just went off to the races with the painting process. So you can see I'm taking my time drawing up my face. It's important to get the drawing process down pat, so that you've got a nice solid foundations to work upon when coming back in with the painting process. You don't go too hardcore into the drawing like you can see me doing. I'm just leaving everything real basic, I'm putting down landmark features, landmark tones, and then yeah, that's essentially all you really need to get started on a painting. Is just simple shapes, forms, tones, and then yeah, you can get to that painting process. It's all about creating a foundation that allows that painting process a nice head start when you come into that painting. So how about I let you just watch the finishing up of this drawing, and I'll see you in the little painting part. So just quickly to mention, because you didn't see it, off camera I took my drawing away and I sprayed it with a fixative adhesive, so that my drawing doesn't smudge, doesn't move while I'm applying paint, and also doesn't mix in with the paint, makes my paint all muddy with charcoal. So yeah, that's an important step, to just throw on some adhesive over the top of your drawing. Usually you'd want to not paint on top of that adhesive, because sometimes the chemical compounds can react with the paint layer. You never really know exactly what's in that adhesive. If you're using that, could it react with the oil paints or your mediums that you're using? So, but obviously I don't really care about that. This is just going in my sketchbook, so it's no big deal. But if you really care about it, there's a process that you can do. You can just get the gesso again, but you can water down that gesso, and after you've applied the adhesive to your drawing, you can put that watered down gesso over the top of your drawing. So it's got this thin layer of gesso. It just protects that drawing with that extra strength, and then allows that separation between that adhesive and the paint layer, just so it can sit on top of that nice thin gesso layer. So you can still see the drawing, but yeah, it separates those chemical compounds, just in case anything happens. If you're really fussed about it, I'm not too fussed. It's going in the sketchbook, so it's not a big, elaborate painting process, so I'm not too fussed. But if you are doing it on this canvas and you want to take that extra precaution, that's just a step you can do as well. But you can see I am just putting in the most, Cesar Santos likes to call this stage the dead coloring stage. Whether or not he learned that from the Angel Academy in Florence or not, I can't remember, but the dead coloring stage is a fitting word for this stage, because it's just pretty much dead colors. It's not going to be, you don't want it to be the exact colors at this stage, because I paint in layers. You might not paint in layers, but if you don't paint in layers, I highly suggest that you start doing that. It just adds this next level of vibrancy and form and value to your paintings that you can't get from just one simple layer. So I really recommend that you paint in layers like I do as well. So back on the dead coloring stage topic, the dead coloring stage is essentially just flat colors, basic values. It's not going to be the exact colors that you're going to want, but it is going to be the correct values that you're going to be working from. So keep your values in mind, but don't fuss about the colors too much. Honestly, you could do this monochrome, this layer in monochrome. If you really want to, you could just do black and white and do the values in black and white, and then come back in the second layer and add color over the top of it if you really want to. That can work too. Same process, same thing. Still adds that nice bit of texture and vibrancy to your paints, working in layers again. But yeah, either way works. This stage, don't worry about the colors, just worry about the values and getting things down. Think about, if there's some things you need to touch it up now in this stage. The first painting stage is always the stage. If you can touch up the painting, if you can move things, if you want to change proportions, if you want to change big aspects of the painting, the first painting stage is the stage to do that. It will become increasingly harder and harder every layer you go to change things, simply because paints are going to fade over time. Different colors fade and become a little bit more translucent over time, and then if this one area you've painted over the top of, and that becomes translucent, you can see the layer below it. It's important to get the first stage, the fixer-upper stage, and letting that be the benchmark for the rest of the painting to build on top of. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna let you watch this first painting stage play out, and then I'll jump back in when I'm in that second stage, and I'll talk about that then. Actually, just before I jump into this second painting stage, I thought it'd be nice to pay a little homage to Cesar Santos, since Santos is the, heaps of artists painting their sketchbooks. It's not his original idea, but Cesar Santos has kind of made it a big thing with his sketchbook, his pages series, page like 1, 2, 3, 30, and all those pages series that he does. He likes to just, put the colors he uses down and maybe some diagrams down with it, make it really deconstructed a little bit. So I thought that'd be cool if I did a little bit of that here in this painting, just by throwing the colors that I'm using down on top of this page, and then writing down what the colors are that I'm using. Just off the dome, the colors that I'm using for this whole painting process is just raw umber, ultramarine, blue, burnt umber, yellow ochre, Indian red, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, and just titanium white. You don't need to use all those colors. Honestly, you can just use yellow ochre, cad red, white and black, titanium white, and ivory black. That's essentially all the colors you could use for a portrait painting. You don't really need that many colors. This is just the basic palette that I work with majority of the time, especially when I'm working on a portrait. This is a palette that I'm comfortable with. By no means you have to follow this palette, but it's just a palette that I like working with. But yeah, by the way, you can see that I just applied some sort of oil on top of the painting. What that does is called oiling out the painting, especially when you see parts of your painting when some have dried and some have not, and some are wetter than the other, got little bits of oil through it. Oiling out really helps even out the drying process of your painting so that it can dry nice and evenly. It also helps having a nice wet slick surface to paint on top of. It makes the second painting really nice and fluid to paint on top of. So two benefits in one really when you oil out a painting. So now for the second painting stage, I'm gonna be focusing a lot more on getting my colors correct, getting my details a bit more fleshed out, getting certain areas of my head maybe fixing up all my hair and then making that look a lot cleaner. I think that's what I'm focusing on to begin with, is focusing on all the hair on my head, trying to get that nice and clean before I move into my face. But essentially, this whole second painting stage is just refining the colors, making the colors match what it is that I see in life, or what it is I see in the reference photo. Get those colors to match up a lot more closer together, and really try and bring some life into the painting. So the second stage is that sort of tool for that important area to do that. And you can see I've switched up from having it on my desk. I thought the desk was a good spot to film it. I thought that'd be cool having a top down. Top down, for filming and drawing is pretty cool, but man, it's hard to paint a top down. It's way easier to paint if you have an easel and you set it up right in front of you, and having that nice and horizontal or vertical in level with your eyes to paint from. So I'd always recommend doing that. Even with a sketchbook, you can set it up on the easel, let it sit there, and it just makes the whole painting process so much more easier. So that's what I've decided to do going forward for the rest of this painting process, and it's just so much easier doing it like this than it is trying to, squint and see how it looks, because when it's top down, your perspective of the painting is skewed a little bit as well. So you're kind of looking at the painting and seeing it from a slight angle, and that can change the whole proportions of the painting, especially since we all look at the painting vertically, right in front of us, up on a wall. So that painting the painting at an angle and then having to see it just like flatten on a wall really changes the perspective and can make your painting look a bit funky at the end of the day. So I'd always recommend just having it as it would be seen, so that when it's seen it looks good, and when you're painting it looks good, you know what I mean? So you can get that all fixed from the get-go. But yeah, Overall, I think I'm pretty stoked with how this portrait is coming together at this stage. I'm playing back and forth with the hair. Obviously, you know, some painters do like to paint like every hair follicle that they can. I am definitely not one of those painters. A nice trick is to look at, if you think about, if you were to sculpt hair, you wouldn't sculpt every individual strand. You'd sculpt it in clumps, and that's kind of how hair falls. It falls in shapes and clumps, and so you can see that I've marked it off into shapes and clumps, and I've really tried to hone in those shapes and clumps together, and then once I've done those larger masses, I can move in and do those smaller shapes throughout those bigger shapes. It's just, you know, breaking it down to big shapes and then small shapes is a good process, good working process to when you're tackling hair. I find it's been really helpful for me, especially painting hair a lot in the past. So yeah, that's a good quick tip. So you can see now my painting approach with the face is a lot more spotted. I'm using a smaller brush now than I was in the beginning. You can see my colors are becoming a bit more vibrant. They're becoming a bit more lifelike. So that's something to take into account in this second painting stage. Like I said before, you're going to want to match those colors a lot more to the reference photo or to life. So yeah, it is. That underpainting really helps you bring that vibrancy forward as well. So that's really good. That's a really great thing about painting in layers, is that first layer is there to help you out as well. I don't think there's much more to talk about this layer. I'm just gonna let the rest of this painting layer play out, but before I let that play out, I just want to say that I didn't film the final touch-ups. For whatever reason, I just started touching up and I just forgot to put it on the camera. I didn't film the third painting layer. It's just a more refined type of painting layer. I'm working a bit more finely, a bit more smaller, a bit less paint, a bit more oil, so that I can just work in those colors and those details a bit more nicer. But I will show you the finished painting at the very end of this video, so you can look forward to seeing that. But just keep in mind that there was a third painting stage involved in this painting, and for whatever reason I just decided I didn't want to film it. So apologies for that. But I will get on top of that next time so that you can see the entire process. I think that would be very valuable because everybody sees how to start a painting. It's a bit harder to finish a painting, so yeah, I apologize for not filming that third and final part. But essentially, it's much the same as the second layer, just more refinement, more color matching, being a bit more delicate with my brush work. So yeah, that's essentially the only part that's not in this video. But I will show you that finished painting at the end of this video, so stick around for that, and I'll talk more at the end of this video. Enjoy. here we go. Here is the final painting. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all got a lot of info out of this video. Let me know down in the comments if you liked this video. Please hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications when I upload next. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you later. Alright, so I hope you all enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next episode.